And we are joined now by two key members of the House Intelligence Committee holding that hearing with the FBI director tomorrow, Democrat Joaquin Castro, Republican Will Hurd. Thank you both for joining us this morning. Congressman Hurd, let me begin with you just on the question of the day. Have you seen any evidence that President Obama ordered an illegal wiretap of President Trump?
George, no, I haven't, and thanks for having me on the show. I haven't seen that, and to quote my 85-year-old father, Bob Hurd, who's given this advice to all of my friends when they got married, it never hurts to say you're sorry.
So you think the president should say he's sorry?
I think so. I think it helps with our allies. We got to make sure that we're all working together. We live in a very dangerous world, and we can't do this alone. And when we have a major ally, and it's not just sorry to the president, but also to the UK for the claims or the intimation that the UK was involved in this as well. It doesn't hurt, and it takes away from the rest of his agenda.
And Congressman Castro, I assume you agree with that right there. What do you expect from FBI Director Comey tomorrow? Do you think he's prepared to address this publicly?
On the wiretapping, I hope that he will. You know, George, this will be an opportunity for us to have an open discussion about this investigation. I'm sure that we're not going to hear everything because we aren't in a classified setting, but I think there are a few things that I'm hoping to hear. First, whether any Americans are being investigated for cooperating or conspiring with the Russians who interfered with our election. Second, the scope of that investigation. And third, a timeline for resolving it.
And then to follow up on something that Chris Ruddy was saying, and the White House is talking as well, we do have the former Director of National Intelligence, James Castro, who said he's seen no evidence of any collusion between the Trump campaign or people associated with the Trump campaign and the Russians. Have you?
Well, it's my understanding that that's exactly what's being investigated. He's stating that there's a conclusion that's being reached. My understanding is that that's still being investigated.
So up to now you haven't seen any evidence, but the investigations continue to pursue that.
No conclusion one way or another.
So meanwhile, Congressman Hurd, how do you expect to go about this? And bottom line, do you think the committee, the House Intelligence Committee, is going to get to the bottom of this? What's it going to take?
Well, I think it takes a bipartisan, thoughtful, thorough investigation. First, we got to allow federal law enforcement to continue to do their job. I think some folks will probably be frustrated on Monday not hearing certain answers because there may be an active investigation going on, a criminal investigation. And if there's an active criminal investigation, we need to allow law enforcement in order to do their job. Then the House and Senate Intelligence Committees should be reviewing what law enforcement, their responses have been. We should be reviewing what the intelligence community is doing. I'm looking forward on Monday to having the NSA director and the FBI director go through the timeline publicly on the Russian involvement in our attempts to influence our elections. How did we respond? And also part of this is to, if we understand what they did, to plot out how we defend against this in the future, and maybe be able to tell our allies like France and Germany what they should be doing to inculcate themselves from Russian attacks.
Congressman Castro, how much damage do you think has been done to our intelligence relationships with Great Britain and perhaps Germany as well, given the events of the last several days? They're some of our closest intelligence relationships.
It is quite alarming, George. You think about our long-standing relationship with the British, our relationship and information sharing with the Five Eyes, for example, and how hostile the president has been not only to the CIA and the FBI, our own intelligence agencies, but also to Australia, for example, now Britain and certainly Germany. These relationships work, and working together on things like counterterrorism is only successful if these nations and their intelligence agencies trust and have confidence in the United States. So when you hear these outlandish comments, what I keep thinking is that there's a real possibility that the president is undermining these relationships.
As you know, Congressman Hurd, the president and his allies believe that he's being undermined by people inside the intelligence community. You worked at the CIA. What do you make of these claims that there's a deep state, so-called deep state, working against President Trump?
Well, I spent 9.5 years as an undercover officer. I was the dude in the back alleys at 4 o'clock in the morning collecting intelligence to protect our homeland. And you have professional intelligence folks, and then you have the political intelligence folks. The men and women in the CIA, they do their job regardless of who is in the White House. Same for NSA, same for FBI. These men and women are putting themselves in harm's way, have to deal with difficult situations. And what I think, grisly step, this is how the intelligence community refers to the Russian involvement or attempts to manipulate our elections. It's going to go down in the history of Mother Russia as the greatest covert action campaign, not because President Trump won. There was no manipulation of the vote tallying machines. It's going to go down as the greatest covert action because it created a wedge, whether real or perceived, between the White House, the intelligence community, and the American public. And that's why, as we go through this review and investigation, it has to be bipartisan, it has to be thorough, and it has to be thoughtful, because we are feeding into this covert action narrative that the Russians are trying to create.
Congressman Castro.